page.
I hear the video. Oh, there it is.
Refresh the page.
Got it. Got it.
Refresh the page.
Got it. Right now I'm back.
Good morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven, WNHHFM, your home for community radio. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines, stories that make our community tick. No one's made it tick and bop more than our guest today. You know his music because every day his music begins this program. It's usually recorded, that's what you're hearing now, but he's playing along with it live. And it's a song that has to do with that is related to a holiday, a big holiday beginning tonight, Wednesday night. So say good morning to David Chevan, bass player extraordinaire, band leader, musicologist, composer, professor, an all-around great guy, one of the leaders of the Afro-Semitic Experience, a band called Bassology, organizer of New Haven, Catelia. He keeps traditional melodies alive. We're talking about the Passover holiday tonight. Remembering plague that wiped out lots of people at a time when a new plague, COVID-19, is wiping out people, casting darkness over our community, and in a micro way, changing the way people in the community will be celebrating Passover or Easter this weekend. David Chevan, welcome back, as always, to Dateline. How you doing, man?
I'm all right, Paul. How are you?
Good. Are you in quarantine?
I am just here in the house with my wife, trying to figure out how to teach all these things that I do online in an instant. Because, of course, I had never really explored that until, the coronavirus hit. And suddenly, if I wanted to teach people how to play music, I had to figure out a way to do it online.
All right. Well, you're playing Eliyahu Hanavi. We're going to end the show. A different version of Eliyahu Hanavi you've done to adapt to the coronavirus. But Eliyahu is Elijah the prophet. And at Passover, he plays an important role at the end of the Seder, near the end. We open the door and we look to see, we welcome him in, the spirit of Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet of the Bible, who it is believed in some lore will come back in the incarnation, the herald in the form of the Messiah, a new day of redemption and freedom from the plagues. Do you think about that, David Chevan, when you play that song, or what do you think about?
Well, there's a lot of different uses for Eliyahu Hanavi, but as you were talking about it, I was thinking about how the appearance of Eliyahu Hanavi in the Haggadah is a reminder that even after the Jews got out of Egypt, they still found themselves in so many dire situations, so many times when they just wished there was some messianic figure that would pick them up and take them out of that dire situation and just magically restore things to a better state. Kind of how we're feeling right now, isn't it?
That's right. So you play
just poof, and things would be okay.
And we kind of wish the Messiah would come. That's a complicated phenomenon. The tendency to wish for an Eliyahu Hanavi. So I'm wondering if it can have negative ramifications when false prophets feed into that and accumulate power under fake ideas of being messiahs, whether it can have a negative because it teaches us not to take action in our own world to prevent or address disaster, but rather count on some Messiah to do it, or if it could be positive, partly from the way you deal with Eliyahu Nadav on so many forms for our times, where the process of wishing for redemption, even if we use a symbol or a name like Messiah or Eliyahu Navi, can in fact re-strengthen us, strengthen our resolve to take action, not to lose hope, because without hope, we can't take action and persist amid crisis. David, are you thinking about any of that when you're going up and down your fretboard, or what do you think about the role of Messiah and Eliyahu in dark times, whether it's slavery in Egypt or the coronavirus?
I think, uh, I think, Paul, you're asking really great questions.
But you're just playing the music.
No, I'm thinking about the questions, and I'm playing my bass at the same time because I was just playing the Hisha Amda as you were talking about that.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about how, on the one hand, we have these stories of the plagues and the stories of leaving Egypt and the seas parting, but we also have a story of Nachshon, right? Who said, "Well, I can't wait for God to take care of business. I've got to start the work myself if God's going to come through." So Nachshon was, to me, a really good example of the kind of other characters we have in Jewish lore, which
And
is to
just so
say,
people know, he's the one who said we could cross the sea, and he's the first one who went in, and everybody followed.
let me tell my story, Paul.
Oh,
Let me tell
sorry,
my
sorry,
story.
sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's where I'm going. So the story of
Sorry.
Nachshon is, there were the Jews at the side of the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army is coming. Pharaoh's army is coming closer. And Nachshon says, "What's going on with the seas? I thought they would part." And nobody else would go in. And Nachshon didn't just walk into the water of the Red Sea. He walked up until it covered his mouth and his nose. And it was only when the water covered Nachshon's mouth and nose that the seas parted. But it did it because of his brave action. So that's the story of Nachshon. It's not waiting for the Messiah to come, but taking things in your own hands and helping to make the miracles that we're talking about actually happen. We know that you and I both have friends who are working at Yale and elsewhere, who are working on that so-called miracle, whether you want to call it a miracle or not, which is some kind of shot or something that will help us in the coming season. So that when the coronavirus hits again, we're all ready for it. We're all vaccinated, and that would be a miracle, wouldn't it?
That would be a miracle. And we're talking about miracles, we're talking about COVID-19, we're talking about music, and we're talking about Passover with a man who incorporates all the disciplines to do it. David Chevan, bass player, composer, band player, here on Dateline New Haven, WNHH. I don't know if you can slide that slide, just go to newhavenindependent.org. So, David, you're playing the from the Seder. Throughout the Seder all night, tonight, and I guess Harry's telling me that when you're playing, for some reason I can't be heard, which I didn't realize. But tonight in the Seder, one way we keep people awake for hours while we do it is that we talk, we eat, and we sing a lot.
We sing
right?
a
We'll
lot.
talk
We
about
sing a lot.
when we were slaves to Pharaoh, and then we'll sing about being slaves to Pharaoh. Do you remember growing up in Western Massachusetts when you had Seders, what you felt about music at those times? Were you like me and other kids who found like Mom, there's Tanan and singing, and And Diane knew that those were the favorite parts of the Seder for you.
Oh, I love the singing. I love the singing so much. That's why I was playing. I learned two different settings for the Firkashes, for the four questions. And one of them was the old Lernersteiger that they used to use in the Yiddish Cheders. And they'd be like, so there was that one, and then there was another version of the four questions. I'm just looking up my sheet music here to see if I can, so it can jog my
Just so our
memory.
listeners
Ah,
know, that's the point of the Seder, and we ask, why is this night different from other nights? Why do we recline? Why do we not eat bread? Why do we eat bitter herbs? Although I would argue that the language actually might be one question, four answers, but that's okay. But David Chevan is showing us how it was always sung, and that was important, but it was sung in different ways, in different times, in different places, correct?
yes, I would. I really have to say I only know a couple different versions of the melodies for four questions, but what I know is it's always sung, and it's traditionally sung by the youngest child or the youngest person at the table. The idea being that the Seder isn't just a meal, isn't just an opportunity to sing and be with family, but also for there to be teaching and learning, and that we're passing on tradition and we're passing on knowledge from one generation to the next. So the idea that the youngest person there sings the questions is a suggestion that we're always teaching one another, and that the elders have something to share with the younger generation. Uh,
That's great.
and so there's a really nice version of Manish Tana that I learned a little bit later in my life. Yeah, that's usually how it's done at my Seder table anyway. A little bit of
So
firkat.
I was listening to that, David. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So when you started playing the theme before the variation, I was thinking, okay, that's the Maxwell House American 1960s synths main version. That was the
Mm-hmm.
first one I learned. Everyone I knew we learned. Manishtana Lila Hazemi Call Hallelujah. But you were vamping on it. So in terms of what you learned, were you talking about just that regular melody, or were you playing some kind of variation that developed? Because it really did sound good when you were going on that.
It just these melodies inspire me, Paul. These melodies. This is sort of a tangent, but maybe it isn't because I have a very rich life as a jazz musician, and at a very young and impressionable age, I was in a class with a great teacher who taught me about the history of gospel music, African American church music, and he would not just, even though it was a history of African American church music that he was teaching me, he'd put on jazz records. He'd say, listen to that. Listen to how much church that guy has up in him. And I would listen, and I'd say, wow. And then he'd play me the gospel recording or whatever that was related to it. And then he'd look at me and he'd say, you got any church in you? And I said, well, actually, I'm Jewish. He said, well, you got any synagogue up inside of you? And I realized I did. And that over the years, I've discovered that if you dig into whoever you are, into the culture, into the world that you grew up in, into the music culture that you grew up in around you, daily, weekly, whatever it is, I have so much Jewish music in my life. And when I touch my Jewish roots, I find I can bring things out of those melodies that I
Mm.
hear because of the jazz experience. And I hope once in a while somebody says, yeah, man, that cat's got a lot of shul up inside of him.
I think I say that every day when I listen to your recordings. So, of course, Manish Tana, the question is, why is this night different from other nights?
Mm.
So, in our whole lives, every year we go to a Seder or two, and we ask that question. So, in one sense, we're asking what makes the night different. But every year, we're usually asking it the same way. We might change the melody, as you were mentioning, on how we sing that. But we're making that night is the same every year as we ask why the night is different. But this night tonight is different. Because of COVID-19, we will not have the big Seder tables. Even from Jews who usually don't turn on electricity have gotten permission to find ways to turn on Zoom before sundown so that they can connect with people who are alone or people around their table. It's going to break my heart that this year I can't be with my grandson in person, but at least I'll see him and my daughter on the West Coast. When you sing that tonight or hear that at your Seder, what's it going to say to you, David, that this night is different from other nights? Or is there something that's still the same?
So to answer your
Was
question,
that Avadim Hayinu?
yes, it was. And that's the answer to your question in part. The answer to your question is here we are, isolated from one another, and this night is so different from every other night. And yet, at its core, there are going to be things that, because of the recursive nature of the Passover Seder, the way we do it year after year and keep the same structure, it gives us a balance to the imbalance elsewhere. When I am reminded as I've been reminded this past week of the stories of satyrs in the ghettos, in the concentration camps, I'm reminded that wherever we go, we find ways to seek that balance and that sameness and that recursive nature of the practice of Judaism. And
Mm, that's beautiful.
that doesn't deny for me the utter sadness I feel that I can't spend this Passover with my father-in-law Bob Abels, and I can't spend this Passover with my mom and dad Janet and Al Chevan in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I can't spend this Passover with my son Jesse in Manhattan and my son Noah in Brooklyn. That I can't spend it with so many people beyond just my immediate family who've touched my lives and with whom I've spent so many seders. So I have both my sameness and I have my sadness. And one of the great balancing acts we have in our lives right now is figuring out that we don't have good days and bad days. We don't have good seders and bad seders. We're going to have moments within our seders which are going to be combinations of both.
That's beautiful, David Chevan.
Thank you, Paul
And that's on
Bass.
Dateline New Haven. That was really beautiful. So tell me, David Chevan, tonight, how are you going to be doing a Seder if you're going to be doing one?
Oh yeah, I'll be doing a Seder for sure. So we've got the Pasco lamb actually marinating right now.
I
And
baked a sweet potato yam. We have Pascal yam because we're vegan.
that's right. I know that, but I'm omnivorian, so I eat whatever in front of me. And in this case, my wife Julie is making an incredible feast. She's got this potato kugel that she made yesterday. Oh my God, the house was smelling so good. Whew. And I just was sad that as I was smelling it, that my sons won't have a taste of it. You know,
And is it going to
I,
be the two of you doing the Seder? Or are you
it's
going
gonna
to
be
Zoom it?
we're gonna zoom it. We're gonna zoom it. We have a tradition of sharing it with some friends of ours who have been having this massive Seder the first night every year, a massive Seder that tends to go 5-7 hours depending uh, on how everybody's energy is. I mean, just these long conversations and just really wonderful moments of singing and sharing and laughing. Um, but I'll tell you, in the era of COVID-19, you couldn't do that table because we get about 20 something people all around this tiny bunch of tables, and it's wonderful and it's beautiful. uh, they're also vegetarian. They have a little stuffed lamb that they put on the table, for the Paschal lamb.
Zoom does make it hard. I don't like davening by Zoom. I was saying Kaddish for my brother, and I was
Yeah,
so thankful that one of the synagogues in the area did do Kaddish with 10 or more people showing up on Zoom. And I did it,
yeah.
and I'm thankful to them, but it didn't feel the same way davening as you do with 10 in a room.
It won't, but I'm really glad to hear that because we were also recently did a big huge family gathering, some 30 odd people, because we were celebrating the 1 year Yizkor of my uncle. And it was just amazing to see it. And we have super frummy people in our family and people like me who I don't know what I am. But in any case, what happened was uh, the most some of those ultra frum in the family made it possible for my aunt to say Kaddish. And yeah, it wasn't the same, but it was also a magic moment to see all my family together and reciting together and giving my aunt strength in that moment.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that happened. David
So was
Shevin,
I.
in addition to the Passover Seder, there's another tradition that changes that's important to your life, which is live performance, performing with other musicians and performing in person. You got together a group that you helped organize, the New Haven Capella, which is a citizen orchestra.
I'll let you go,
Sorry.
Paul. I know. I
Okay,
keep cutting you
citizen
off.
orchestra, New
I was
Haven
feeling hot
Capella.
god, yeah. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, you get to the end of the Seder. All right, you're going in order. So the New Haven Capella is a citizen orchestra. They do great. People love it. They do big events, and they play together. keep old Yiddish music alive. You have not been able to perform because of COVID-19, but you did put together a video, which Harry Dross is going to cue up when we say goodbye. Tell me
Hmm.
about how this came about and how this has to do with preserving our traditions during the era of a plague.
Well, initially, I was so overwhelmed, genuinely overwhelmed by the process of converting my teaching from in person synchronous music making, that all I could put my energies into, to teaching online. All I could do was put my energies into that. And I mean, and a couple of other projects, but I'm not going to get into those right now. But one morning, my wife Julie said to me, there's been all these great videos online. Passover's coming up. Really, you know, you have the people, you have the means. Why don't you do it? And I said, yes, let's do it. And
What'd you do?
because, sorry.
What did you do?
So what I did was I assembled a team of people to give me advice about how to create a good video online. And the first person I consulted was my son Noah. Noah's finishing up a degree in digital media and film scoring and digital scoring at the grad program at Brooklyn College. And I asked him how I could do it. And basically, he ran me through that not only did I have to play my part, but I really had to make sure that I was cueing everybody and really helping everybody else who was going to play their parts. Now, you don't see that in this video because Noah is a technical wizard, and all the times I say, "Here we go," or I give some sort of verbal cue, he was able to take those out very nicely so that all you hear are the musicians. But
Were you
basically,
playing it once, David? Did you set up a video for members of the Coppelia sitting in different locations?
yes. So I'm explaining that process. So I basically videoed myself playing, giving instructions. But before we passed it around to everybody, Noah suggested that we get the drums and the accordion on, so people would have something really easy to play along with. They could hear the beat, they could hear the chords. So we didn't just jump and pass it to everybody. First, we sent it to Dana Astman, who's this really terrific accordion player and community member, and to my son Jesse, and they both added their parts. And Noah mixed those in. All people saw was me, but they heard the whole rhythm section. And then we sent it around to the entire Coppelia, gave them a Google Drive to deposit their video recordings. And in the course of 3 days, Paul, in the course of 3 days, we went from concept to everything being in. And then within about another 2 or 3 days, Noah took all of the recordings from the videos. And I also want to give some big props to Noah Chevan, because not only do you do that, but we have a number of senior citizens. I mean, one of the great things, as you know, Paul, but maybe your listeners don't, is that the New Haven Coppelia has people in it as young as 8 or 9, and all the way up to people in their 80s. Okay. And those people in their 80s, they have cell phones, but they might not know how to upload a video to a Google Drive. And Noah worked with everyone who made a video to make sure that their voice, so to speak, their instrument and their face would be seen as part of this video. So it was
Wow, that's
huge tech
amazing.
support. Yeah.
How many people performed on it?
So in total, there are 32 different musicians playing on this track.
Wow. And
Yeah.
what did their ages range from?
Um, let's see. I think we have someone as young as I think 12 on this. Eli Jackson, who plays the violin solo. And I'm not sure how old our oldest members are. So, and also, I don't want to disrespect, but let's just say they're somewhere in their 80s.
Uh-huh. Well, David Chevan, you just did an amazing build-up to a crescendo for this episode. Before we play it, I want to thank you for making the time, as always, to come on Dateline New Haven. I want to thank our listeners for joining us and wish them a really happy and meaningful Passover and Easter in these times. I want to thank Harry Dross,
Thank you,
Miracle
Harry.
Man behind our programming, station manager WNHH. I'll be off for 2 days for the holiday, then back next week. Stay safe, everyone. We're going to listen now and watch a video that David just described to us. The New Haven Capella performing Eliyahu Hanavi.
Happy Pesach, everyone. Azis and Pesach. 2, 1, 2, 3, and.